He's really come onto the scene, I would say, in the last year. I had the chance to play him for the first time at Star City Games Open, actually, in Kansas City.
Okay.
But since then, I played him in multiple formats, and I actually haven't beaten him yet. He's a good multi-format pilot, plays Twin in Modern. Today he's playing Mono Black Devotion in Standard.
Well, it's hard to set down the deck you just won a Grand Prix with, right?
Yeah, but he'll be playing the Mirror. That's against Joshua McKinster.
A Thoughtseize is going to start things up. Berni is going to show a Mutavault among some other cards in just a moment. But again, Berni winning the most recent Grand Prix last weekend in Phoenix. He'll spread the hand. There's a Pack Rat, a Temple of Silence, a Swamp. Looks like a bunch of other cards. It looks like he's on an all-land hand with the Pack Rat, so there that goes. Berni kind of shrugs his shoulders as he did take a mulligan here. Hopefully that Temple of Silence can actually find him some action moving forward.
Yeah, so there's just some breakdown on the deck lists that the players are using. Berni, sticking with the deck list that he was able to win the Grand Prix with, what you should know is that he's kind of on the previous level Mono Black Devotion. He still has the 4 Night Veil Specters in the deck, whereas Joshua McKinster has taken out the Night Veil Specters. Instead, he's playing 3 Herald of Torment, 1 Lifebane Zombie. That makes the deck more robust in like these other matchups that are cropping up, but in the Mirror, you have to think that Berni is at an advantage.
A Pack Rat here for McKinster gets him off to a beautiful start. Berni, a little bit of issues right now. You see McKinster taking a look at a Gray Merchant that he's going to keep on top. His 3rd land did come into play tap, so not another Rat here. In comes the Rat. Berni looks like he's going to attempt to maybe block with the Mutavault. It's got to be a little risky, but he is going to try and succeed.
Now, that was a couple of things that just went very well for Berni.
Wow.
First of all, there was a saving grace there that Joshua didn't have the 3rd land to make an extra copy of Pack Rat. That was a BioBlight bluff there from Joshua, which I actually like in that situation most of the time, except Joshua Thoughtseized Robert on turn 1. So at that point, it's like Robert is in such a bad spot. You know, he knows he's going to lose when that 3rd land untaps, that he's going to go ahead and make that call anyway. You know, he's like, as soon as Pack Rat makes another token, the game is over for Robert.
Sure. I mean, I guess he has to attempt to block, as you mentioned. If he does get the opportunity to make another Pack Rat, he's in a world of trouble. You see Hero's Downfall takes care of the Herald of Torment, and now Berni has a Desecration Demon here. So all of a sudden, McKinster is the one behind, where we saw a turn 1 Thoughtseize, a hand of Pack Rat and just land. So some fortunate draw steps here for Berni.
Yeah, and the memo still I think is not always out on Pack Rat, that in this matchup, once you may have Pack Rat, the game is about keeping Pack Rat alive and making more Pack Rats. And Joshua took 1 turn and off that plan, and it looks like it's going to cost him pretty big.
We see an Underworld Connections for McKinster before he passes the turn back to Berni, who's going to fire Mutavault. Looks like we're coming in for 8 points of damage. So the Grand Prix Phoenix champion will deal 8. McKinster's going to go down to 10. And the follow-up play is a Night Veil Specter, a card that really does help define the mirror match.
Yeah, so this is a card that has really fallen out of favor in the mono black decks. Some play it, as you can see, Berni is playing them today, but it is not, I would say it's not a mainstay right now of mono black.
Yeah, McKinster has the card that a lot of people have been actually opting towards in his hand, and a copy of Lifebane Zombie. He's also got a Gray Merchant and a Desecration Demon of his own right now. It looks like he's going to deploy the Demon and leave a mana available to activate Underworld Connections, but you know, it's kind of hard to say which way to go. It looks like green decks are really starting to fall by the wayside here, Matthias. Green-red monsters, Jund monsters, things of that nature are really starting to trend downward. As you see, Berni's going to activate his Mutavault, Hero's Downfall, the Desecration Demon, and attack here for what looks to be Exactsies, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
That's going to be lethal there, so game one's going to go to Berni. He was on the wrong side of the Underworld Connections fight here, so that did put some pressure on Berni to become aggro this game. Fortunately for him, he had enough removal to see that plan through long enough to get Joshua's whole life total.
Now, question for you before we do get to the sideboards. Would you rather be on Night Veil Specter, or would you rather be rocking the Lifebane Zombies, or as McKinster is this particular week in Herald of Torments?
Well, so I still am a little of a fan of the Night Veil Specters. I do realize they're a lot worse against the monstrous decks, and I think it's more where you want to trade your points. For me, mono black, one of the things I like about the deck, or at least straight mono black, is its ability to grind. You know, its Underworld Connections are very strong in the deck. There's a lot of matchups where you just go on the all kill spells and card advantage plan, and I think Night Veil Specter is like that second Underworld Connections you're looking for a lot of the time. So I still really like Night Veil Specter. That said, I also am a big fan of the non-mono black variants, so things like black-white mid-range, or even like the black-red, quote-unquote, mono-black deck that Eric Froelich likes to play. In those decks, I don't think your mana base really wants something like Night Veil Specter. In that case, I do like Lifebane or, you know, Bramaz or whatever creature you want to put in that slot.
All right, we're going to head over to the sideboards here. McKinster is going to be on the play for game number 2. We're looking at an Erebos, God of the Dead, 4 copies of Duress, 2 Doomblades, a Pithing Needle, 2 Dark Betrayals, 1 Devour Flesh, and then 4 copies of Staff of the Death Magus. We'll talk about Staff in just a second here, as we did not see very many of those last weekend in Milwaukee, but you can believe that Erebos is going to come in, some number of Duresses, not sure if he wants all 4. It'd make it so he has 8 discard spells after sideboard, along with 2 copies of Dark Betrayal, and I think you can make an argument for the Needle or the Devour Flesh.
Yeah, I mean, the post-board matchup, as it has been for a while, is both players, as quickly as possible, are going to try to destroy each other's hands. You know, it would not be surprising to see both players on 1 or 2 card hands as early as turn 4 in this matchup. So cards like Duress, cards like Erebos, you know, they're very good in this matchup because once you tear apart the other guy's hand, you want to be the first one to recover. So Night Veil, Underworld Connections, Erebos, those are the really important cards. You know, both players do have Dark Betrayals out of the board. They do have Thoughtseizes. They do have Duresses. Cards don't stick very well in hands. You have to just try to get one of those cards on the battlefield quickly. Yeah,
the only difference is here, Berni's sideboard, 4 Duress, 3 Lifebane Zombies, 3 Dark Betrayals, 2 Erebos, God of the Dead, 2 Pharika's Cures, and then 1 Devour Flesh. So presumably both players will be boarding in their 4 Duresses. Their copies of Erebos, where Berni has 2, McKinster has 1. And then, again, you can make arguments for a card like Pharika's Cure or Devour Flesh. Dark Betrayal is very obviously going to come for both players, so I don't really think it's worth talking about that one, at length. But, you know, do they want additional removal? We just saw a game where Desecration Demon got the job done, but that's not the norm in this matchup.
You used to want additional removal because you needed to make sure Pack Rat didn't live. Now, thanks to Bioblight, Pack Rat's not as scary anymore. I'm not even sure when you get a Pack Rat how all in you go on your Pack Rat right now. That said, I think if you're McKinster, you may still need to try to Pack Rat your opponent in this matchup. He's at a reasonable disadvantage here because, first of all, he does not play Night Veil Specters. He plays Lifebane Zombies, and a Night Veil Specter is one of the cards that can blow open a game. So he has less of those trump cards. You know, McKinster has the Underworld Connections, he has the Erebos, but Berni has those, an additional Erebos, and 4 Night Veils. So he has a lot more card drawers to make his way toward. On top of that, Berni has some 1-ofs that help him here. He has a 1-of Whip of Erebos in his deck, which is also very strong in the matchup. If he can, once again, if he can stick one in play, it can be strong.
It seems like people are actually trending back towards Whip now. I saw Owen Turtenwald playing a couple copies of that in his sideboard last week in Milwaukee, and it's a card when Mono Black actually broke on the map at Pro Tour Theros. You saw a bunch of those in the deck and people playing them, and then people actually worked that card out of the deck, but it looks like they're working it back in here, maybe for a little bit of life gain against these hyper-aggressive decks that are showing up to and including Red, White, Burn, which kind of brings us back full circle here to Staff of the Death Magus, a card that showed up big time in Grand Prix Beijing. Yuya Watanabe, Shuhei Nakamura dominating that Grand Prix. Yuya winning his 7th Grand Prix with that card in his sideboard. Last week in Milwaukee, we didn't see any of those in Mono Black Devotion lists because presumably what happened is, you know, Staff of the Death Magus shows up. Patrick Chapin writes an article about it. It's kind of the buzz that's going around, and so everyone decides, I don't think I can play Burn because this card exists, so everyone felt that they could cut it with that thought in mind that everyone's going to be scared of it. I don't have to actually play it. This particular week, and you see McKinster is playing 4 copies in his sideboard. How would you move towards, you know, that kind of debate or subject of would you play them or would you not play them?
Right. So this really shows how, especially in a format like Standard, it's all about metagaming. I remember going into SCG Milwaukee, I talked to Patrick Sullivan before the tournament and asked him, okay, hey, what is the best list of Red, White, Burn right now? The deck seems really strong. I remember he wrote back to me and he said, I'm not playing Red, White, Burn right now, which if someone like, you know, someone like Patrick or Basic Mountain there saying don't play burn spells, well, that really shows a reflection in the community of, hey, wait a second, people are out to get this deck. And he really didn't feel like the deck could stand up to the hate. So yeah, Mono Black Devotion, at least for one weekend, has a lot of Staff of the Death Magus. The question is, if players are still sleeving up Burn, it's going to be good. But it is a large commitment. That's 4 cards in your sideboard, and it's really just for one matchup. So I'm not surprised to see some of them start to leave decks, as you see Berni doesn't have them anymore.
Yep, not too, surprising, where people are actually moving away from that card. But at the same time, if you think that you're going to play against Burn a bunch here in this particular tournament, or it's just a deck that you don't want to lose to, it's not a bad card to actually have in the sideboard as Game 2 is underway. We'll see a Duress fired off here. The hand for McKinster, he's got a couple of Swamps, a Desecration Demon, and a Herald of Torment, so this Duress is going to be a whiff, but it does provide Berni with some information. As you see, a mulligan did take place here for McKinster.
Yeah, so it is a whiff there, but Berni's got to be pretty happy with that information there. Joshua's hand is 4 lands, a 3-drop, and a 4-drop. That's got to be, that's very good.
And it looks like there's a Gray Merchant in there too, so maybe he just didn't spread it that well. It doesn't look like he did take a mulligan. But at the end of the day, no spells over there for
that
him.
hand can be really problematic for Joshua because there's so many cards on Bernie's side that he can't answer. A turn 2 Pack Rat would get him. A turn 3 Underworld Connections will probably get him. A turn 3 Night Veil into any kill spell, which Bernie almost certainly has, also will get him in this situation. So while that hand has a curve, it's a little bit of a glass cannon right now.
Here is a Herald of Torment. As Bernie will untap, he'll take a draw. Presumably has a removal spell for this in some fashion. He'll tap 3 mana. He has a Night Veil Spectre. So the lesser 3-drop in terms of power and toughness has shown up, but it definitely has the more relevant text here in the matchup as McKinster will take 1 on his upkeep from the Herald.
Yeah, so what Bernie is going to try to do is Bernie's going to want to make this matchup all about removal spells because his deck's better at grinding. Night Veil will carry the game provided Bernie doesn't get aggroed out by Joshua here.
The attack here for 3 is going to put Bernie down to 17. McKinster will play a Desecration Demon. We'll see if Bernie has a removal spell for that. It's a Dark Betrayal, so not too surprising as they do load up a removal spell. So now here comes the Spectre.
Right, so the card advantage game begins here. It looks like Bernie has a Devour Flesh in hand as well. So as long as he can continue to kill all of Joshua's creatures, then, you know, this card advantage engine of Night Veil Spectre should pull him ahead.
Yeah, it's basically just reach, draw a card every single time.
And Bernie very wisely doesn't make his land drop. He swings Night Veil first. You see he hits Swamp, so he's going to be able to play his opponent's land.
And now McKinster will slide that Swamp underneath that Night Veil Spectre, just so we know what has been exiled by the 2/3 flyer. And now Bernie going to figure out how he wants to proceed in the second main phase here. As you mentioned, he hasn't played a land yet, so he can actually use that Swamp. Maybe he has a Scryland or a Mutavault that he's considering playing, but it looks like he is going to go with the Swamp, and we'll see what else he wants to do here.
Yeah, there's some considerations there. I think what he's considering is Mutavault protects his Night Veil from a Devour Flesh, which he does have one of in his hand. As it turns out, he wanted to make Underworld Connections, and if he's planning to do that anyway, he should cash in that Swamp in case the Night Veil Spectre dies.
Yep.
Yeah, now there are 2 card advantage engines in play for Bernie, and Joshua probably can't card advantage back, so Joshua has to play the aggro game now.
Yeah, Gray Merchant's a good start. It's going to be a drain and gain for 4. You saw McKinster lose 1 on his upkeep because of the Herald, but he's going to go back up to 20. Bernie's going to go down to 13. Let's make it 10 from the attack here for 3. So it's 20 to 10, but Bernie's the one who just needs to deploy all of his cards now because he definitely has the card advantage in his favor. He's going to start by attacking here with the Spectre. He just needs to make sure he doesn't die.
Yeah, I like how Joshua's playing this. I like that he's going for the aggro. I think that is the line he's supposed to play. Unfortunately, it's a line that is probably not going to work. I mean, all it takes from Bernie is 1 Gray Merchant, and Joshua really can't fight anymore.
Yeah, the Gray Merchant would be for 7. You see the Night Veil Spectre, the Underworld Connections, that provides 5 devotion. Gray Merchant itself provides 2. So it'd be a draining gain for 7 if that's what Bernie has. He's actually just going to play an Erebos at this point, which is also live right now. So the God of the Dead can do some attacking. Bernie can play that Dark Betrayal off a Night Veil Spectre whenever he'd like. But more importantly here, the Erebos actually allows to brick wall the Gray Merchant that probably would have considered attacking now.
Yeah, Bernie's got to leave up the Dark Betrayal instead of drawing a card there. And just in case Joshua has another Gray Merchant, Bernie will want the option of killing something in response. Otherwise, he would go to 1.
You do see Gray Merchant coming to the red zone here, and Erebos says, "I'm alive and well, thank you very much."
Yeah, Joshua's holding back that Herald of Torment on defense. Unfortunately for Josh, the Dark Betrayal's under Night Veil Spectre basically means that the Herald of Torment won't be able to block.
And it's not even going to be alive anymore. Dark Betrayal is going to fire off and take care of that. Bernie opting to do that instead of draw a card with the Underworld Connections, feeling that life is pretty good right now. I don't need any more cards. I just want to get this game over with. He's going to deploy Mutavault pre-combat. And we'll see if he wants to fire up the other Mutavault before attacking here, but he's doing very well for himself.
Yeah, he's been able to turn this card, like get equity out of all these extra cards he's drawn. You know, he's gotten all these extra lands, he's gotten these extra removal spells, and he's been able to 1-for-1 with each of these extra cards he's gotten. And now we see a board where Joshua's out of resources, Bernie's not, and that should be able to take it for him.
Yeah, there's an attack for 7. Here's a Gray Merchant. Devotion count's going to be 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's a huge drain and gain. You see Bernie pick up a Duress off the Night Veil Spectre. And he's going to cast that. He's going to see a hand of 3 lands and knows that I am living pretty good right now.
Yeah, I don't think there are any outs for Joshua here. Gray Merchant's a good draw, but it's not good enough at this point.
Yeah, not going to gain any life because of Erebos being in play. So it's just a boring old 2/4 that'll drain Bernie for 2. Nothing all that impressive. You see Berni point to the air bow. It's not surprising that the Grand Prix Phoenix champion knows exactly how his cards work, knows that Grey Merchant is going to get the job done. He'll quickly untap, he'll take a draw, and he will attack in here for lethal, and that is going to do it. Robert Berni off to a beautiful start here in Dallas-Fort Worth, not too far from his home in Austin. He is 1-0 with his Grand Prix Phoenix deck that did win the tournament. Mono Black Devotion strikes again.
Yeah, and I really like Berni's list of it. I know it's nothing super innovative, but I like that he has kind of resisted the current flow of things. And he's still playing, the Night Veil Spectre version of Mono Black. I think that deck is so time-tested and its pieces work so well together that you see games like that almost, Robert piloting the deck makes it look easy there. Just play removal spells, play card draw, coast to a win.
We've seen different versions of this deck, as you did mention. Last season, more so last season than this season, we have seen people try to do the black-green version, even though they didn't have the black-green temple, which is something we will discuss today. But they didn't have the black-green temple. They were trying to splash for Bulgarian Charm and Abrupt Decay and all this stuff, and they had pretty bad mana to do it. So people tried that, dispatched it. Then we've seen people try black-white mid-range, splashing for Blood Baron and Last Breath and Revoke Existence and Elspeth to some success, not a ton. And we've also seen Eric Froelic's versions, you did mention, the black-red splash, splashing for Rakdos' Return, Mizium Mortars, Slaughter Game, stuff of that nature. Eric making the top 8 of the Grand Prix last weekend, but the deck that came out on top is the player who's on your right there, Robert Berni, getting the job done with just a traditional take on the deck. Nothing too crazy going on here. It's like we've worked all the way back to square one.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of players who've been on this Mono Black train the whole time. Robert Berni's had great success with Mono Black, as you saw in Grand Prix Beijing.